Welcome in everyone to Understable Discourse interview edition, where I sat down with a touring pro to talk about the event this past weekend. And while you may have seen me sit down with Holland and Luke in the long form episode on Monday, the 16th, about the Big Easy Open, I had an opportunity to also sit down with Gannon and do a complete solo interview with that. So here's my interview with Gannon Buhr. Huge thanks for him coming on the show. I hope you enjoy it. Here's Gannon. All right, Gannon, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and talk for a few minutes about the Big Easy Open this past weekend. Kind of a wild event. And one of the things I wanted to ask you kind of right off the top is, before the event, in the press conference, you mentioned, in your opinion, that the course wasn't quite ready for the Pro Tour. And we heard a lot of pros echo that same opinion throughout the next few days. Now that you're a couple days removed from it, you've played the event, do you feel the same way about Parc des Familles as you did before the event?
Slightly. My opinion has slightly changed, and I was saying I'm not sure if that's because I just got numb to playing holes that like don't have a line over and over, or if it's because I actually, I guess, started to figure out the challenge as the tournament went on. I felt like, players did end up figuring out the course. We saw that day two scores were considerably better than day one scores in terms of how many people were actually able to get under par. Obviously, the final day was really windy, so it was kind of tough to score there. But um, I would say it grew on me a little bit, but at the same time, there's probably half the course that probably needs changes still in terms of just cutting the trees. I was saying the layout is probably 85% good. I think that all the pins were in pretty good spots, and yeah, pretty much it's just the skinny trees that need to be cut.
Yeah, so if you take away some of the cleanup issues and that kind of thing, do you like an event where 11 under is enough to win?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, a lot of people want to compare it to golf, and I think that is pretty comparable. But I also think there is a way to have a hard course that's also very fair. I'm not, I guess a couple examples I'd give are like Northwood Black, although it is getting a little more scoreable as the years go on. Or like the Monster. I think disc golf's always going to be a more scoreable sport just because the short game's so much easier. You know, I don't think we found a good way to make getting up and down from 200 feet difficult without having it be unfair or lucky. And I think, we've experimented, obviously, putting baskets on hills and putting, bunkers on either side of the green and stuff like that. I think is a very good way to do that, but we have to be more intentional about that. I think if that's the part of the game we're wanting to challenge. I feel like out here, we would, have a game plan off the tee pad, but then you walk up to the par fours and you pretty much just like there's no plan. You just like, well, we'll see where I land in the tournament, and it's totally intuitive, which is its own challenge in itself. But yeah, having these low scoring tournaments, I know some viewers have liked it, some viewers definitely didn't like it. I think it's gonna have mixed opinions no matter what. But me personally, I think it benefits me as a player potentially, just because I think I do tend to excel at harder courses, and I think it's gonna take out more of the field, but. Yeah, I definitely, I enjoy something that's challenging as long as we have it fair.
Yeah, I like that because Brian Earhart was saying on the All Birdies No Bogeys podcast that they had the like the teleprompter thing where they can draw on it, and they were having a hard time finding use cases for it because there really weren't places where landing zones were exactly ideal, because everywhere you were going at, you had to be, like you said, super intuitive of how are you going to navigate that next shot. Do you think that because of your creativity, I mean, we all saw what you did on hole 18, that's probably one of the most impressive shots that we've seen in the last few years. Do you think your creativity and your skill set lends to you just being better at these types of courses than the average player?
I would say so, yeah. I think I look at all the options off the tee pad, and especially when I get into a scramble position. Um, there's very few times that I ever make a mental error in terms of a decision that I make, I think. And I also am usually within the top three of scramble rate at the end of the season. So I think I have every angle, forehand and backhand. Obviously, being tall helps. I can kind of lean out of like bushes and stuff like that a little bit easier. But I feel very confident like scrambling with my forehand. I think you know, just being such a nerd at the game, I think I've studied all the ways to make it the most successful and have the highest percent chance to whatever that is, get up and down, say birdie, say par, even say bogey sometimes. And So I think courses that do require creativity definitely help me out.
Being a nerd of the game, you definitely understand that Ricky Wysocki is one of the most, I would say, one of the best momentum players that our tour has ever seen. When he gets on one, it kind of just feels like he's moving downhill. Like everything is just kind of falling for him. When you talk about scrambles and his ability to hit clutch moments, like what does it feel like for the people out there who aren't on the pro tour? What does it feel like to have to deal with being locked in against a monster like Ricky down the stretch when he is just hitting those 50 footers?
Yeah, well, Ricky is such a wild card. He's so different than I feel like any other competitor on the pro tour where he plays a very like I don't even know, field-based game, I would say. I don't think he's really ever thinking about like, oh, where's my arm? How's my form looking or anything like that. He walks up and he throws. You can tell when he gets into that mode. He's walking quick. He's like either blowing on his fingers or licking his fingers, and he's always just like his head's moving quick. You can tell when he gets in that mode. And then as a player, you're like, well, I'm screwed. You know, he's gonna just execute. And he's obviously probably the best scrambler we've ever seen. He can get up and down from anywhere. His forehand's insane. Um, and but the weird part about Ricky is like when he's off, he's kind of off. He's pretty off. But that's also the scary part is the second he sees one go in or he has a one good drive and he has the momentum, then it's like, well, he's not going to stop until he throws a bad shot, and that's might take a while. Might take 5 holes. So you have to kind of know that as a player. But you know, it's also possible to slip up at any time, and that's kind of what happened on 15 there. He missed that putt, and it really the door was creaking open. Luke Taylor was like he made some creaking sounds, and I was like, "Yep, it's right there. I got a chance now." So definitely knew I had to take advantage.
Yeah, especially after that, triple digit. I would guess most people wouldn't call it a putt, but I guess in your case, with your distance, you'd call it a putt there on hole 17, cashing it from deep. That's probably some of the more emotion we've seen from you on the course after hitting a big putt. Is that like you also in that moment of squaring off against a high level competitor like Ricky, and also considering kind of everything that had gone on so far? Is that just raw emotion coming out right there?
Yeah, I think most of it was. I would say like there hasn't honestly been too many times in my career where I've been in that position. The only other time I really think about is either 17 at USDGC or I had a putt I think on hole 13 at Worlds last year that kind of like didn't seal the deal, but definitely helped my chances. And they were both like deep circle two putts or mid circle two putts, and they meant a lot at the moment. And obviously there was a pretty big crowd out there at the Big Easy, so you want to give them some energy as well. But you also have to match Ricky's energy, or he's gonna take more. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't. I feel like it's kind of weird to get super hyped for like anything like less than 45 feet, I guess. So that was obviously like double that, and so I think it definitely earned the right to get celebrated and show some emotion there.
Yeah, I mean, so I know that there's obviously a lot of conversation about hole 16 and then the playoff on hole 1 and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to dive super deep into that because people have asked the questions to no end. We're obviously getting there's the knee jerk reaction that everyone had to everything. Now we're kind of getting more details about the timing of when certain things were brought up or whatever. But from your perspective as someone at the highest level of the game, how difficult is it in the moment to make calls on competitors? I mean, I don't feel like our rule system, the way it's set up, is very helpful to be navigated by you guys on the course in the moment.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what the right answer is. It feels like no matter what we do, it's going to feel personal at the end of the day. It's not going to feel like it's a sports call. And I think that is where we just have to the marshals need to be on their A game. I think it comes down to that. Obviously, it's a self-officiated sport, but then you have Isaac, 200 feet on the other side of the fairway because that's where his shot landed. It's not his fault. You give us these big fairways to play. That's just how it works. And these marshals are paid out here to do their job, and it seems like the only job they're doing is calling time violations or time warnings. When there are so many more rules in disc golf, like foot faults, courtesy violations. Obviously, what happened to Ricky, he also had kind of a controversial call on hole 15 when he putted, tapped out. So there's tons of other things that like they need to be looking for. If they're gonna be paid to be out here, they got to be on their A game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Especially as we try to legitimize our sport, we need to legitimize how rules are called and dealt with. Um, looking at the event as a whole now and seeing kind of the narrative that a lot of people are, I think, starting to make of, oh, Ricky and Gannon are rivals now. They're rivals. We heard that last, at the last event with Supreme Flight Open, and then we go to last year when it was like Gannon and AB are rivals. I feel like they're trying to push this rival narrative, which is obviously a good thing when it comes to like the sport and writing and all that kind of stuff. Do you give any credence to the idea of having a rival on tour, or are you just so locked into yourself that you don't care who people are pitting you up against? You're just going to go out there and do what you got to do.
I would say Ricky and AB and maybe Macbeth are like the three guys that I really do not like to lose to. Um, I think Ricky brings the most energy. AB's like my closest comparison, and Macbeth just because he's like the GOAT. I want to, obviously, like if I have a chance to beat him, I want to beat him to prove myself. So I would say those three guys. Obviously, there's no like actual beef between anybody. We're all like pretty decent friends outside of just competing, but when it gets in the heat of the moment like that, sometimes it does feel like a rivalry, especially if it comes down to some controversial call. I don't want it to be that way, but sometimes that's just how it is in sports. And uh, when the heat of the moment happens, it's just like it's going to be intense no matter what. But I agree. I think it's very good for sports. You got to have rivals. You got to create a storyline, and if you can have those two people that actually feel that raw emotion coming down the stretch, then I think it's going to be really exciting for the viewers to kind of feel more locked into the coverage and be excited for the next tournament.
Yeah. So speaking of the next tournament, obviously, a really, really solid at finish for you at Supreme Flight Open, especially with that last round getting so hot. A win now down in Louisiana. How are you feeling going into the next? I call it a new event. It is a new event, but it's not at like a new venue. How do you feel going into that and now moving out through the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think this early part of the season, if we're talking specifically courses, is definitely not suited for me. I think I play my best on the more open style, like OTB, Portland. I can even play well kind of at Des Moines or D-Glow, sometimes GMC on the open side of things. So I definitely prefer the more open with like lined OB because I feel like my best skill set of my game is throwing far and accurate. And so that basically allows me to break courses and go super far down par fours and get easy birdies. And it's not the case on a lot of these wooded courses, it feels like. It feels like you kind of have to play some golf and it gets a little more difficult for me, especially because like my best disc golf is also just throwing stock shot over and over and over and over again. And I think that's a problem I always had at Supreme Flight was like that course just gives you so many different throws and it's very hard to get into a rhythm. So I was really happy I was able to put together that good final round to, only lose by one. But obviously carrying a lot of momentum going into Charlotte. I played really well there. Hornets Nest, we played the match play championship and I did really well there. So I'm excited for it. I think Charlotte's a great tour stop. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of great fans out there. Obviously, the course has a bunch of history as well, with Macbeth getting his first world title there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I want to hopefully get a few more wins here in the early part of the season. I've never really started a season that hot before. This is definitely the best start I've had in my career. So that's a good sign for me. And yeah, getting the win just it helps me have confidence moving forward, which is going to be extremely important for me because it feels like I was always kind of stuck behind that barrier of like, well, I need to have like, you know, almost 7 events into the season. I'll only have one win sometimes. So getting the win early and even the second place, good confidence builder. And that way it just kind of takes some pressure off me. That's kind of how I felt after Worlds last year. I went immediately after and won Ledgestone by a lot of strokes because I didn't feel any pressure. And I think that's important.
Gotcha. So I guess it sounds like the competitors should be shaking in their boots right now. But Gannon, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and spending some time talking about the event a little bit. Before I let you go, if people out there want to support you, want to help out, where can they find you? Where can they support you at?
I mean, yeah, I mean, basic support's just going to be buying anything that's got my name or logo on it. So that'd be jerseys or Tour Series discs and stuff like that. Hoping to have some merch available soon outside of that type of stuff. But other than that, yeah, just show up to the events and always just be cheering loud.
All right, man. Thank you. Once again, I appreciate your time and good luck going forward. And Hope to have you on later this year after another win of yours.
All right, thanks.
Once again, big thanks to Gannon for coming on. I love his intentionality with the way that he describes how he kind of approaches his thoughts on the course and the event. And I just think, like, you know, we often see Gannon in that, hey, this is that young fellow who loves Legos, we kind of goofy or whatever. But when you boil it down, he's a fierce level competitor who has a very, very mature mindset about the tour and the way it's structured. So super great to have him on. And yeah, if you like interviews like this, let me know in the comments down below who I should have on next time after the next event. And yeah, we're going to be doing more of this year. I hope you're enjoying it. If you like this video, make sure you go down there and put the comments, hit the like button, punch that subscribe button. Best way you can help support the growth of the channel. I appreciate it endlessly. But until next time, I'll see you later. This has been Understable Discourse.